Hey everyone, after flying the DJI Air 3S for the past few weeks, I have compiled a list of things you may not know or may not be immediately obvious about this drone. And I have also been getting a ton of questions, such as, are the filters and batteries from the Air 3 compatible with this new Air 3S model? So let's jump right in and take a look. Alright, let's start with something you may not know and is somewhat of a hidden feature on the new DJI Air 3S, and that is something DJI is calling subject focusing. Now this new subject focusing feature expands the capabilities of the lock exposure function. Now just quickly, if you didn't know what locking the exposure did, if you're flying your drone in auto mode, which is where the drone automatically controls the ISO and shutter speed to get an image it thinks looks properly exposed, what you might notice happening is as you fly the drone around, you get these quite large exposure shifts. And if you're doing a drone move, you wouldn't want the exposure to change in the middle of that move, as that wouldn't look very professional. So you could actually press and hold on the controller screen until you've seen this yellow square appear with a padlock in the middle, and this would let you know that the exposure was locked. And what this means is the ISO and shutter speed that the drone has automatically chosen for the given scene now gets locked or frozen, so that as you fly the drone around, you won't get these dramatic exposure shifts, leading to better looking footage. Now locking the exposure still works as normal, but what you might notice using this new Air 3S is that if you appear in front of the drone's camera, you now see a similar yellow box appear over yourself. So what is this? Well, this is the subject focusing feature. If you ever used the older Air 3 model to capture footage of yourself, especially if you were standing close to the drone's camera, what you might have noticed is occasionally you would be out of focus. Well, this feature aims to prevent that. Now when you appear in front of the camera and this yellow box appears over yourself, if you then lock the exposure, you will again see the small yellow padlock symbol appear in the center of that square, but what you will notice is now as you move around, this yellow box is tracked over the top of yourself. And what this is doing is it's using intelligent subject recognition to always make sure you are in focus so that you never end up with any footage that when you're in front of the camera, you appear blurry. Now a question I've been getting asked quite a lot is if you're upgrading from the Air 3 to the new Air 3S model, and you have lots of filters for the old model like me, do these work on the new model? And unfortunately the answer is no. The camera housing on the new Air 3S is larger than the older model, and this is due to the new 1-inch sensor on the main camera. So what this unfortunately means is that the older Air 3 filters are now much too small to fit onto the new Air 3S camera. So if you are upgrading to this drone, you will unfortunately need to buy new filters. Something that is nice, however, if you are upgrading, is that the older Air 3 batteries are compatible with the new Air 3S. The design is exactly the same, so the older batteries fit in the drone no problem at all. Just be aware though that the voltage and milliamp hour capacity is slightly different between the older and new batteries, so do expect some variation in max flight time when using them older batteries. Now, one of my favorite new features on the Air 3S is the fact Vision Assist has been upgraded to version 2.1. Now, to access Vision Assist, you first want to expand the mini-map on the bottom left corner of the controller by pressing this button here, and then swipe on it sideways until you get this Vision Assist preview. Now, if you didn't know, what Vision Assist is it allows you to see a camera view out of the obstacle avoiding sensors on your drone so that you can see in a different direction than the main camera is pointing. And this will allow you to keep an eye on obstacles that are around your drone whenever you're doing maneuvers. Now, as mentioned, this Vision Assist functionality has been improved for the Air 3S. Now, alongside being able to see out of the forward, left, right, and backward facing vision sensors, you can now also see a view downward from the downward facing vision sensors. And this is going to be very useful if doing a move like a drop down, for example, so you can keep an eye on the obstacles beneath the drone. Now, just quickly before moving on, if you're getting value from this video, please let me know by giving me a thumbs up and clicking that like button down below. And if you love all things drones, but also action cameras, gimbals and more, and want to learn about the best settings to get up and running quickly, along with tips and tricks to help you get more cinematic videos and better looking images with your gear, then please consider clicking that subscribe button down below. And when you're down there, be sure to check the notification bell so that you will be alerted when my new videos are released. It would be greatly appreciated. Now, arguably one of the biggest improvements to the Air 3S is the changes to the obstacle sensing system. Unlike before, where the obstacle avoidance would turn off in low light or nighttime due to the lower limit of light required for them systems to work being 15 lux illuminance, with the new model this limit has been lowered a lot so that the obstacle avoidance continues to work even if you're flying in low light all the way down to 1 lux illuminance, which is as low as 1 candle light at 1 meter. So that's a very dark environment in which obstacle avoidance will continue to work. Now, one of the hardware improvements allowing this functionality is the inclusion of this new LiDAR sensor. Now, very simply, the way this LiDAR system works is that it sends out infrared pulses in front of the drone to detect any obstacles, as them infrared pulses bounce off them obstacles and back into the sensor. Now, when using a camera to film the drone, you can actually see the infrared light pulsing out of the front of the LiDAR sensor, but to the naked eye, you won't actually see these infrared pulses. But a functionality you might not be aware of that is super useful to know about, especially if you do fly quite a lot in low light or nighttime situations, is the fact that you can actually check which sensors facing in which direction are currently working and turned on, and which ones have turned off due to them light requirements. So if you take a look at the top right of the controller screen, you will see this small icon here. And this icon lets you know the status of the obstacle avoidance systems. So if you're flying in daytime, this icon will be completely white. But if you are flying in super dark environments, you might see some areas of this circle start to turn red. So for example, here you can see the right side of the circle has now turned red, and this is indicating that the right facing vision sensors have now turned off and therefore won't detect any obstacles facing in that direction. Now, you can actually expand this icon by pressing on top of it, and now in here you will see more detail on whether or not the forward or backward, left or right, or up or down sensing is available or unavailable. Now, speaking of flying at nighttime, if you captured a lot of nighttime footage, one of the best features on the older Air 3 was the dedicated night mode. Now, once you switched into this, it would actually increase the noise reduction being applied to the footage so that it would look cleaner and have less noise. Now, if you purchase the Air 3S and you go to look for this dedicated night mode, you won't be able to find it. Now, that's not because it has been removed, but it's actually because it's now been integrated into the normal video mode. So now if you're using either of the cameras at 4K up to 30 FPS at night, the night mode will activate automatically. And this is really useful because it means you won't miss a moment because you have to spend a few extra seconds changing into a different mode. Now, when flying at nighttime, you don't even need to think about it as the drone switches into that mode automatically. Now, another newish feature on the Air 3S that is slightly hidden is something DJI is calling Focus Track, but you might already know it as subject tracking. Now, before on the older Air 3, if you went into the settings menu, you could turn on this option called subject tracking. But this has now been moved to the home screen, and it's this icon here over to the left side, and when you press on this, you will see Focus Track has been enabled. Now, Focus Track is essentially the same as subject tracking, it's just been moved to the home screen. And if you didn't know what subject tracking was, with this feature turned on, any subject that the drone recognizes it can track will have this small square icon with a plus placed over the top of it. Now, what this allows you to do is, instead of having to manually draw that tracking box over something you want to track, all you have to do is tap on this plus icon and the drone will do it for you. It's a time-saving functionality. Now, personally, I never really used subject tracking because if you were in an area with a lot of subjects that the drone recognized it could track, such as this car park with all the cars, all of a sudden your screen gets bombarded with these plus icons, and this can clutter the view and make it much harder to compose your shots. So I always had it turned off. But something I have noticed in my time testing this drone that I hope gets fixed with a future firmware update is that even if you don't have focus track turned on, if you then start a track manually by drawing a box over your subject, once you have finished that track, focus track has been automatically enabled, and now you will start seeing these icons appear all over your screen again, which means every time you do a track, you have to then manually turn off focus track, which can get a little annoying. This was not something that happened before, as with the subject tracking option turned off in the settings, it stayed permanently off. So hopefully this is something that gets fixed with a future firmware update. Now, speaking of tracking, on the Air 3S, the auto tracking mode gets upgraded. So with the previous Air 3, if you selected Auto Active Track 360, the drone would automatically perform different maneuvers around you as it was tracking you, meaning that if you got one long tracking shot, you would actually come away with a range of different clips so that you could create a sequence with it. It meant you didn't need to keep stopping, changing the drone's orientation and starting the track again, interrupting whatever you were doing. Well, with the Air 3S, this gets upgraded to something DJI is calling a static active track. So now when you enable Active Track 360, you will see this new auto button appear above the tracking wheel. And when you turn this on, the drone will still perform automatic maneuvers around you as it's tracking you. But the magic with this improved version is that now, using its vision systems, it will intelligently pick different orientations to track you from that result in nice compositions with cleaner backgrounds. So this means, unlike before when using the auto mode, you might have got some shots where the exposure was bad or the background was cluttered. Now using this new mode, this will result in you getting much more usable clips when using auto tracking. But something you might not know is that you can actually customize the height and distance ranges that this auto mode will operate from you. So if you press the settings button and then go to control, if you scroll down, you will see an option called focus track settings. Now in here, you can change things like the radius and height at which the drone will track you when using Active Track 360, but this also applies to the new auto mode. So scrolling down, you can see you can change the inner radius, which is how close the drone will fly to you when it's set to that close tracking setting, and you can change the outer radius, which is how far away the drone will fly from you when it's set to the far tracking setting. And I actually like to increase this from 10 meters to 20 meters so that you get a bigger difference between the close tracking and the far tracking, again resulting in a greater variation of shots. Scrolling down, you can even change the inner height, which is how high above the ground the drone will fly when it's following you closely, and you can change the outer height, which again is how high above the ground the drone will fly when it's following you from a far distance. And again, I like to increase this to something like 10 meters, so again you get a greater variation between the close and far follow distances. Now, a really useful feature when using the 3x telecamera, and something you might not know, is that when you yaw or rotate the drone on the spot, the speed at which it rotates actually slows down automatically when you change from the 1x to the 3x telecamera. So if you take a look at this quick comparison, you can see when I'm rotating the drone with the 1x main wide angle camera selected, it's much faster than when I change to use the 3x telecamera. And this is such a useful feature that's built into the drone, because it means when you're using that 3x telecamera, you have much slower and finer control over the camera's movement, which will help you get smoother shots when you're zoomed in from a distance. Now, the last feature that I'm pleasantly surprised with, and I think is a fantastic addition to this drone, is something called Free Panorama Mode. And this is a new panorama mode that is available to use. Essentially, what it allows you to do is to natively create custom-sized panoramas. So now, when you switch to panorama mode and select this new free panorama mode, the first thing it will ask you to do is to move the drone around in the air and move the gimbal to where you want the top left of your image to be. And once you have the drone in position, you want to press the C1 button on the back of your controller. Then the next thing you will be asked to do is to move the drone and gimbal to point in the direction you want the bottom right of your image to be, and again press that C1 button. Once you've done this, when you move the drone around, you will see a new AR or augmented reality overlay appear on the screen. And this is actually showing you the boundaries of this panorama image you are about to create. You will also see a new window appear on the bottom of the screen, and this is letting you know how many images the drone needs to collect to create this custom-sized panorama for you. And then once you hit go, the drone will automatically proceed to capture all them images required. And the nice thing is the drone will automatically stitch all these images together to create this panorama, so you don't need to do any additional editing after the fact. And once completed, you will now have a custom sized panorama. I have had lots of fun using this functionality, and I think it's a fantastic addition to this drone. And if you capture a lot of panoramas, you will absolutely love it. So there you have it, 10 things you might not know about the new DJI Air 3S. Now, if you have any questions about this new drone, drop them in a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer them in an upcoming video. Now, if you would like to find out even more about the DJI Air 3S, including all its new specifications and features, then I recommend you check out my full review, which you can do by clicking up here or by clicking the link in the description down below.